there's the blip.
Yep.
It's the blip. Every time I see it, it worries me. But now I see you, and people can probably hear us talking now, so that's good. Man, we had a solid on ramp today.
Yeah, it's the on ramp. I will say I think we've talked before about that idea of the staff room and what the kind of like the power of having a space where you can have honest conversation and kind of get your push your thoughts around, push your peeps around just a little bit, put some pressure on ideas and see if they're, if they're as well formed as sometimes the perception is, these almost sometimes dogmatic ideas that get thrown down on the table like it's something real or something true. It needs uh, what's that called? Like peer mediation or peer review in order to really figure out if it's just a load of bull crap or if it's a real thing. And I think that's what makes our on ramp slightly dangerous, is that we put a lot of pressure on some of these ideas, some of the stuff that is sort of going on. I think not only, let's say, in yours and my relationship, like pressing and pushing those ideas too, but talking about, obviously, about school and talking about our intersection with school and how school kind of intersects with us. So, yeah, I like it when the on ramp feels a little bit dangerous, because I feel like not only are you and I pushing into some raw spaces, which I think is also good for relationship building, right? Especially when you stick around after. Like, it's not just like throwing something at you, trying to insult you and push you away. It's like, here's what I'm thinking. Now I really want to talk about this. So I think there's a good relationship building for you and I, but I think it's practice for when someone else might lean on my ideas in a space outside of the on ramp. So when I get back to the schools, or when um, I'm talking with neighbors in my neighborhood about stuff going on with school. So, I mean, you can take an AQ in having hard conversations and cognitive coaching, but I don't know if it puts enough tread on the road to really get you. Like, we've been kind of apprenticing in these types of hard conversations now. Well, season 3, episode 12.
Mm-hmm.
So after this season, we're going to be up somewhere in the 200s, I think, as far as number of episodes that we've thrown down. Pretty close to.
Um, yeah, I like the idea of what people don't see, and maybe what they might see or hear on the podcast, is the back and forth we do. Like, I have no problem pushing back on your ideas, and I don't think you have any problem pushing back on mine. It's not always like, oh, Clough said this, so we're good to go. Sometimes like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Hold on a second. Explain it to me, or I don't agree, right? Like, how many times have I've been like, I just don't agree with your position, or you don't come out and say it like that. You're more like, you in my opinion, you provide like another side, but I kind of know enough of you now to know that, oh, he doesn't agree with me, and I see what he's doing here. I think that's cool, and I think this morning's on ramp was especially like, there was some good back and forth going on. I think we've gotten to the point, as educators, with our experience in education and our friendship and the way we operate, like, we're just good with providing each other with little tidbits of who we are deep down inside, right? And I think, like, yesterday we had a PD day. It was a spiritual development day, and in the morning we had mass, and then after the mass, as a group, we watched videos, and then we talked, and it was around relationship, trust, building trust, and we watch a little bit of the video, and then they pause it, and we talk to our elbow partner. And it was interesting, like, the people I was talking to, who I knew, so that was good. There was already some trust there because I work with them. There was the talk of, like, it was pretty good, and it was honest. Like, I had no problem saying to these people, you only know me, you only have a certain vantage point of me, right? You know me from 9:15 to 3:45, and you know me in the professional setting, and you know me as a teacher because you come in and out of the room and you see how I operate. You don't know me at home at 9 p.m., on a Thursday night. You don't see that. Or you don't see me at 2:15 on Saturday at the rink with the parents I hang out with there. And so I only give you a little bit of who I am based on the context which I am in. And what's exciting is that with some people, I give a little bit more and they give me a little bit more. And with, so, our relationship, like this morning, I told you something. Remember when I said I'm going dark for a second? I was excited because we've gotten to the point where I don't really care about your judgment. Like you could say to me, holy cow, Roland, that I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you could think like that or that you even express that. And I'd be like, okay, like I'm good with that. Or you could say, that's nasty, dude. Like you don't want to, what are you talking about? And it's like, I would have just said, oh, let me back up and explain. It's not, I don't want to say I don't care. I want to say it's a comfort level where I'm okay. I'm okay to continue to try to build trust with you, no matter what the cost. That's what I'm trying to say. Because there is a cost analysis. And I was saying that to my coworkers yesterday. There is a cost analysis. I might say something to you, or I might act in a way that might have you turned off to me as a person. It could very well happen. And they're like, no, never. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I'm being honest here with you. I'm in the moment here of what the speaker's talking about and what the video was saying. And I'm trying to tell you something that I know that I limit myself in my relationship with you as my coworker. And because of that, there's a new awareness in me, a new maturity, I would call it, where I'm aware that you might do that to me. So how dare I be offended if you do that to me, even though I'm doing it to you? And at this point, they were looking at me like, you're nuts. And I'm like, fair enough. But I'm just telling you that, and we were talking about inclusion and exclusion. And I said, sometimes I exclude myself on purpose. I don't want to be part of something. And I say, sometimes I don't feel so bad about being excluded. And the example that I used was, so yesterday, our family of schools got together at the high school that we feed to. And I drove my wife because my wife belongs to the same family of schools as me. So my wife and I drove to the high school for the morning experience. And my wife was sitting with her staff. I was sitting with my staff. And my wife had plans for lunch. Her and a group of friends that she works with were going to a restaurant for lunch. And she said, where are you going? I said, I think I'm just coming home. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, nobody said anything to me about lunch. And I didn't say anything to anybody at school about lunch. And she's like, okay. And so I use that as an example of like, I'm sure there are groups of people from my staff that are going out together to eat lunch and nobody said anything to me. And I was like, that's okay. If I really wanted to go for lunch with some of these people, I would have said to them, hey, what are you guys and gals doing for lunch? And can I come? But I didn't do that. And so how dare I be upset that I'm not having lunch with some of these people when I didn't ask to be included? And I don't need them to include me. They're doing their thing. They're hanging out with their people. That's understandable. That's the way it works. So anyway, I appreciate, the fact that we've gotten to a place where we can trust each other. And I think this is going to lead well into the next piece that we might want to talk about, where we've kind of, you said it well in the off ramp or on ramp, and I'm going to leave it to you. I'm just going to drop the tidbit of the banner. You're talking about, living or being part of a group under a certain banner and how you feeling about that these days. Is that fair that I leave it there for now?
Yeah, no, I think I often, I get, I'll admit, I start with nostalgia. I think when I look at, when I look at my path through using, let's say, social digital technology, so the ones that are intended to project me, project my my activities, project my thinking, um, in some cases to amplify other people's thinking, to bring to attention other people's projects, all that stuff. Um, like I when I think about my, let's say, my development and my evolution in using these tools, um, I start with nostalgia because I think about like how did I get here? How did I get here in my thinking about using podcasting and using blogging when I do it sometimes putting up my poetry and putting up pieces that are a part of my creative self. Even, using Insta as just another way to communicate my thoughts, my feelings, my ideas, using Twitter mostly for professional, like just I kind of start with nostalgia and I try and trace back to source points. And I think, on the on ramp, we I dropped in that whole idea of concept of kind of big bang, as in what started it, for me, and whether I can't say specifically what started my usage, but I can kind of look at checkpoints along the way and see how other people's tools and conversations led me to want to use, let's say, my tools better, use my tools differently. And I've often said to you that you were very much a kind of like a flag point or a checkpoint for me. And I noticed your podcast, and I noticed the different people that you were talking to on your podcast. So the Chittiat Connects podcast that you were doing back in the day. And it was through there that I connected with other individuals that ultimately allowed me to sort of push my voice out further. And the nostalgia for me, when I start to think about my path and how I use social media right now to connect, and I guess I have to tag this specifically to, I'm actually more nostalgic about how I use it professionally than I am personally. I find my personal use of it kind of moves in relation to professional. I've done stuff with my professional social media accounts that has had probably more of an impact on how I use my personal stuff, like the whole idea of having some sort of a detox or taking time away or stopping using certain tools, using other tools. I tended to test drive a lot of that stuff in my professional space. And then those test drives allowed me to figure out how maybe I could use my personal tools a little bit better. So this nostalgia tends to come with a little bit of self-critical analysis on maybe not necessarily, and to be honest, it's not necessarily how can I do better. When I do critical analysis of my digital tools, it tends to be what's unnecessary anymore. Like, what do I need to take off the table? Like, I've just kind of left it there. So I think part of the on-ramp that was really fascinating was our conversation looking at how some of our colleagues have evolved as well. So are we able to notice growth and change, choice in their social media projections, so how they're repping themselves online? The second layer to that was also talking about, specifically for me, I guess my path coming through voice ed and sort of having a connection with on ed mentors and looking at that in a little bit of a nostalgia kind of mindset, and then kind of stepping through then again for me when the third part to this is removing tools. So I think for me, there's a finite amount of space, and you and I have touched on this a bunch of times, that there's only so much amount of time that I can spend in reflective practice, because the actual demands of my life are far too dense. Like I don't have the time anymore to be able to actively contribute to multiple spaces. So I have to choose where I'm going to be. And when I choose to be there, I can only spend so much time in specific spaces. So even how I curate and I create and I sort of like connect changes. And yeah, even this morning as I'm coming down to set up this conversation with you, I'm thinking about that we've still found a way to position ourselves to have reflective practice that I think I can say without a doubt is it's set up in such a way that it entirely fits with my life. I could not, there was no way eh, with my other podcast, the Chasing Squirrels, like I couldn't commit to a weekly. I, Yet you and I somehow have found a way to commit to that weekly conversation. Now there's a whole lot of stuff in the background, right? I get it. You and I are communicating during the week. We're sort of using we're supporting each other and using this. Like there's a lot of support systems between you and I to get this done. It's not that simple. But I'm just even thinking about the capacity to have a different conversation every week. It's impossible on my own. So that's the final layer to this. The third part to this is, what is the impact of sort of changing communities? So where you actually say to yourself, I can only be a part of certain spaces to have conversations. I can't be everywhere. I can't be everywhere anymore. And I'll say that despite the fact that in a lot of ways I've narrow banded my social media use and my connection within communities, I still feel as if on the weekly, you and I are bringing our respective perspectives to the conversation, and I still feel like I'm moving my thinking forward. There was a whole lot. I don't even know if that was a great summary of what our on-ramp was. I think at the heart of this, though, if we want to take it as a bit of a launch point, is just talking about the evolution of usage and maybe some of the things that we're noticing in EDU social spaces, like how stuff is changing. Like I'm envious of people that can put so much polish on their Twitter posts. And it's interesting to me because I can see even in this current state of strike action, there are some people that even in the time that they've started to tweet and retweet stuff that Stephen Lecce has said or stuff that Bischoff has said, I scroll back and I look at some of their first tweets and it's just like text, maybe a photo. Now later on, there's like GIFs, there's people being tagged in their photos, there's different use of not necessarily fonts, but the use of emojis. Like they're not just setting up these tweets from home. They're doing it from their desktop as well. It's fascinating to see this growth, right? This idea that in order to get your message out, you have to format a certain way. I don't know if it makes the message any better, but it definitely gives far more polish to the personality that's being projected there.
I think like people are fighting for other people's attention.
Yes.
Right? They want to attract people to what they have to say or what they're putting out, you know, be it a product or here, let me put it this way. What I'm currently enjoying are people who are kind of styling up their tweets and pushing out their thinking or their ideas without a product that they're trying to sell. So, and what I mean by sell is like, no, they're not asking for any monetary exchange. They're just saying, hey, this is what I have. Like, let's use a YouTube channel, for example. My students and I have a YouTube channel, and we push stuff out all the time that's connected to our YouTube channel. If I wanted to push that more, you know, I guess I could take more time to create tweets that would attract eyes and attention. And then hopefully that would turn into hits on the YouTube channel. But it's all free. I don't want your money. I want your attention, right? I want your time. I might want your feedback, but I don't want your money. And I think I want to make that distinction, is that there's a big difference between the people who are pushing their stuff out where they're asking for your money and people who are pushing stuff out because they just want your attention. Because I 100 times out of 100 would prefer to give you my attention and my money.
Yeah.
Right? Especially for like a product that I know nothing about, like your book or whatever, your secret
sauce,
your secret sauce, or your podcast behind paid walls, right? Like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, because as you've said, Mr. Clough, if I want to read your book, I'll just look at your Twitter feed. And you know what? At some point you had a blog, I go there and I can find your stuff, and I'm sure if you were good with your branding, you probably had some kind of video connected to like Vimeo or YouTube or something. So I'll just go looking for that stuff. But I'll
Side note,
talk.
that will be the name of my book.
What?
Haha, you bought the book. My feed was
Oh,
free.
gotcha. Okay,
Yep.
you're calling it now,
I'm
like
calling it
you're
now. I can say
okay.
it.
So anyway, that's my perspective on it, and it's fascinating to see. Like you were talking about the Big Bang, it's uh, it's fascinating to see the shifts, but more fascinating to me is not the actual shift. It's like the cognitions that go behind it, the thinking and the ideas and stuff, and what brought you to the shift, right? Like, and you and I were talking about having the knowledge to make a shift, but there are some shifts that would cause us harm if we made the shift, I think. And what I mean by that is the way you evolve into whatever it is that you've evolve into could become a dangerous thing. Um, I've noticed certain people on social media who have become very defensive because their shift was to use a platform that they once used in a way to connect and to collaborate and to grow, shifted into more of a selling tool, leaning on their beginnings in order to push a product to make money from now. And what I've noticed is when people push back on the product component of it, people get defensive and start to say stuff that goes against what got them into starting. So it's like these worlds are colliding. So you start in a very humble place, a place where you want to connect, grow, collaborate. And then you come out with like I said, like a podcast with a paywall. And you start pushing that now. But you're pushing it as you lean on your beginnings, right? So you're like, hey, I'm a growth person, I'm a collaborator, I'm a creator, and hey, I've created this, and I would really love you to, pay $9.99 a month to get it. And then when somebody fires back and says, yeah, I listened to it, or this is a joke or whatever, then you go against the person who started as a collaborator, contributor, wanting to grow. You go against that by lashing out at these people. How dare you say this about my paywall or whatever? Um, you're rude, you're mean, you're being disrespectful. And for me, it's just like I'm just starting to I'm starting to reconcile that. Like I'm starting to think, what do I do with this? And what I have done is I've used the mute button, and I've stopped following certain people because how they started is different than what they are today. And that I got no bones with that. Like that's life, right? That's growth. That's what happens. I don't, and I want to say, to be fair, um, I don't know how these people are living their life, right? Like I'm trying not, I'm judging, but I'm trying not to judge because I don't know what their life is like. Just like as right now, what I'm saying, there could be people listening. They're like, I disagree 100% with what Roland's saying. I don't agree. That's fine, right? Like you don't know where I'm coming from though. So I want to just put that out there to be as fair as I can be. It is interesting though. The whole thing's interesting. I think, well, like I think you and I were talking about this. There's something about the tactics being used that don't sit well with me as and it has to do with my connection, I think, with salespeople and traditional salespeople. The door-to-door stuff. They come to your door and you don't buy, you don't know who these people are in terms of like their character because they're doing a job. So I have a hard time separating the person from the work, right? Whereas you and I have broken that mold. Anybody can break that mold because once you truly get to know somebody, and you know the good and the bad of them, and you still stick around, that's where the magic happens. And you and I have had this conversation. I think it was like, I don't know when, but you and I talked about, I remember saying to you, or you said to me, I don't remember how it went, but it was like, what could I possibly do
That was you,
that
dude.
would,
That was
oh, it
you.
was me, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it came up, but I remember saying something like, what would you hear about me having done that would cause you to sever ties with me? Like what would it be where you'd be like, "Oh, I don't think I can be that guy's friend anymore." And there's something about that line of thought that excites you. You seem to be like, "Well, I don't know." Like I think you were asking kind of for more, and I don't really have more. Like I don't believe I've done anything. I don't believe I've done anything like really bad that would, well, it depends on your
Or maybe
perspective, I
you
guess.
have. Remember
Oh,
what you're asking me to do in that question. What I loved about the question is, well, first off, that it was so loaded. Second, that you actually asked that question, because I think that's a great, I got to come back to it, but I think it's just a great question when we're talking about um, digital ethics, just digital ethics, because I think that's what we're sort of like in um, digital citizenship. And I pushed back on a colleague one time, kind of in the spirit of this conversation, saying that we need to. It was in the spirit of someone pushing back on me and saying the whole idea of we need to be nicer online. And I said, well, I think that's where our training of our students in digital citizenship has kind of failed them to a degree, because part of being nice online has allowed for certain conversations to exist that should have been, people should have stepped up to. And I think sometimes our students, if we if we're only teaching digital citizenship from the point of view of don't post anything that could get you in trouble, or don't post anything that could give away personal details, and we're not teaching digital citizenship slash activism, then we're not really completing the framework. We're not really completing the full set of tools, or yeah, the full set of tools, or the bag of work that the kids need to be able to exist effectively online. Because some of those critical analysis tools do go hand in hand with digital citizenship. I just haven't come across a lot of conversations where people are actively repping that. Um, and I think repping it well in a way that if you want to fall on the, yeah, but if your students are really paying attention to what you're posting, then, are you, because you've heard this too, right? Be careful what you post. Your students might be watching. I have a couple people in my feed. I'm like, I hope their students are watching them, because they're repping conversations so well. Um, yeah. So back to you asking that question about what you could do. I think that that question from you in our relationship was fascinating, only in so much as I think we were kind of playing with words initially, but I think we're also sort of measuring that stick around afterwards part of how do you measure whether or not that was an attack on you? Like what was being communicated in that behavior? And I think my first response to you saying that is that I would probably think that you were having a mental illness moment. Like there was something that kind of, there was something, to use completely jargonized, something snapped, something tweaked, something kind of bumped. But I would still think to myself, there's an element of trying to communicate something to me, because likely I would find out somehow. So I would take it as there's still some message in there to me. Now, the message could just be, Clef, screw you, I don't want to be your friend anymore. Like that could be part of it. Or it could be just part of a conversation that we never got to between us. Um, I think what makes it hard to untangle, or let's say get the threads apart on, is because, and I think this is why I would fall in the mental illness, that there was something, um, that you weren't well, is because the path to that conversation thus far, like if that were to just happen, it would be out of the blue. because I'm not the one that right now is thinking you're setting me up to sort of reveal some of my, our on-ramp conversations. Like we've said, we've had some deep and dense conversations there. If you were to choose to sort of broadcast that, just as an example, um, you've been waiting a long time to do that. Like that's a really long time. And I guess I would have to deal whatever came out of that, I would have to deal. When I take this back to, if I think of an application, like if I take this to a teacher, no, I'm going to start with the dad thing. I want my own children to be constantly not only asking themselves, my own two kids who have not stepped into social media yet, not only that, am I posting well? Am I actually using this fluency appropriately? But I'm also starting to have conversations with them. What would you do if? How do you push back on things that you disagree with? And not really starting with, when I talk to my own children about digital literacy, I don't start with being nice. I never start with being nice. I think that's way too easy of a starting point. Way too easy. And my kids, just for full reveal, like my kids are in elementary school right now. So, where did I get on that convo? I don't know. I would assume that there was something mentally not well with you, sir.
Got it. And I would I would think that there's a lot I need to work with. But you know what I just realized?
Tell me.
I realized that you've spent most of your career working on the fringes of education, right? So you've seen broken people. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that in something along the way has happened to cause someone consequences that lead them to sitting in front of you. And, that I'm going to talk like big picture, the special education realm. In fact, in the way people learn differently and operate differently. And that might involve, behaviors and attitudes that are not pro-social due to the fact that people have been going through a system and living within a system that doesn't recognize how they learn and what to do to help them learn, which causes them to end up in front of you, be it the access program, kids who are expelled or suspended. And I think that now that we're talking this way, that's one of the things that I think makes it easier for me to chat with you and to talk to you about all kinds of stuff, because you've spent time working with people that I would consider broken for, and I don't mean like broken forever. I just mean experiencing something in their life that is not working, that is just needs to be repaired or needs some attention, some TLC. And so what a great quality, to what a great qualities to have. And let me take this like outside the realm of what you and I talk about on Decoded. It's now reminding me of the people that I work with at school that have spent time working on the fringes. And it is those people that I feel comfortable around because they've seen and heard all kinds of things that a teacher in education could they could have a 30-year career and not have seen a fraction of what these people have seen in 5 years working on the fringes of education. And I'm going to actually throw myself in here, having worked in an adult high school for, I would say it was a year and a half. Man, I saw enough stuff in that year and a half that when I see the same type of thing now, I'm not as bothered by it as I once was. I'm not as shocked. And I have to give the universe a thumbs up for letting me have experienced that at such a young age, because I was dumb, young, and impressionable when I was, 23, 24. And I saw things there that I didn't really like. It's now starting to dawn on me what you get by working on the fringes of education. So in spec ed, with suspended and expelled kids, not being a regular classroom teacher in a regular elementary or high school, you just start, you see things, you hear things, you experience things that will either give you strength moving forward or will kind of break you down moving forward. And I think that my question to you at that time revolves around the fact that you've been pushed to a limit or two. You know, you've seen and heard things and worked with people who have not been, you know, the ideal human to hang out with, but you still did it. And you seem to have come out of it um, with growth, with insight, still relatively positive attitude. So I think it was just like, well, what could you see or hear that would cause you to walk away? But I think part of that is is a comfort level with you, right? Like I'm not going to ask that of like the teacher that works in the classroom next to me on Monday morning. First of all, I don't think that I have a relationship with that person like this one. It's also like I don't really care to ask that question of them, right? I'm not hunting for, hey, you might learn a little bit more about me, and I don't know what you're gonna think. With that person, it's like, well, it doesn't matter because I just work with you. I don't talk to you. I don't podcast with you. I don't, you know, take an evening out to have dinner with you and chat. And I think that's the more like the farther I get into work and the older I get, I'm not seeking I'm not seeking like a lot of people in that realm anymore. It's just one or two. Like the other day, my buddy from Ottawa, childhood friend that I still talk to and hang out with, messaged me and said, "Hey, you want to do a FaceTime?" I said, "Sure." And we were chatting. About 5 minutes into our talk, he said something that just killed me. I just burst out laughing. I was literally laughing for minutes to the point where, as I'm laughing, my wife is texting me saying, "Are you okay? What's going on up there?" kind of thing. And when I finally was able to come down from the laughter and the enjoyment of what my friend said, I had a moment of this is one of my people. Like that doesn't happen to me often. It probably doesn't happen to a lot of people often. This is one of my people. And so when I told Sarah what he had said, she just shook her head because when the two of us get together, it's immature, it's playful, it's nothing like what people would see of me at work. But I believe that everybody has a friend like that, right? And what I see, that's the thing, what I see at work with some people, I know that they're not like that outside of work. And that's fine. That's cool. That's cool. My positioning now at work is I hope that I get to learn a little bit something about all the people I work with, so that we can be connected and function great at work. But outside of work, people are going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to be who they're going to be. And it's the same with Twitter, right? It's the same with our Twitter friends. What they see there is what they see there, and what we see there is what we see there. And if there's more to it than that, I just find it fascinating. I have found this morning fascinating to take a look and see some of the growth of some people that you and I are connected to. And, you know, with respect to the Big Bang that you were talking about, like the podcasting early on and that type of thing, the nostalgia, right? It kicks in.
The one of the other, this connects what I said about my own kids and their social media use, and your comment about what could you do that could sort of change, I guess, change the dynamic, permanently change the dynamic of our relationship. Another question that comes to mind, and when I look at how people's social media presence evolves, is I like to ask myself, what is it that I know? What is it that I know about this person that is true? Not what I believe, but what is actually true. And I'll take true to be, I'm going to simplify the definition. 100% accurate, 100% without. No, just say 100% accurate. That's what I'm going to say for truth. What do I know about them that's 100% true? If I apply it to your question, I would have a hard time reading your social media post as truth, because I think the truth, I would fall on the side of what I've gotten to know you in moments like this and when we hang out. If I use it for my own children as a tool to be critical consumers of social media, it becomes a little bit more tricky, because I don't know, I'm not sure that they have the life experience to be able to kind of assess that on the fly. So my hope is that the conversations around truth will happen in our family and we can sort of work that out. When I use it as a template, or let's say a lens to look at my colleagues' posts, it creates a little bit of dissonance for me. Because then it asks me, how true am I being in my posts? How much am I actually repping who I am online? It also, when I look at how people curate and kind of polish and publish, the moment that I feel like I'm being targeted as a consumer or a customer, I start to question whether or not, like, I'll take that as truth. They might perceive any of their followers as potential customers or clients. But that's where I start to ask the question whether or not I want to be a part of that truth. So there are some individuals that, as they post and I see their posts becoming more polished, and it feels like everything gets directed back to their brand, then, and we've talked about this is where I start to either mute or unfollow. For me, it comes kind of back to, do I feel like I'm still connected to the human behind the actual profile? And if I start to get the sense that I'm not, I'll ask the question, well, what do I do? What do I need to do to improve that? So I might DM the person, or text or phone. Sometimes I have it. And then other times I realize it's just something I've been hanging on to for no reason. And again, I kind of, where we started this conversation, it's about maybe just not getting rid of that tool. And I don't feel too bad about that, about unfollowing or muting or even blocking, if I feel like the content still keeps coming across my feed. But I do ask the question first, is there a way for me to reconnect, to find out more of the truth? And if we take it back to you saying, what could happen in our relationship, or what could you intentionally do? There's a likelihood that I would do one of several things, which might include showing up in your hometown to have a conversation, right? Or phoning you or getting in direct contact. So that's sort of in the pursuit of what's truth. So it's not just the simple, if I choose, I have to actively, and I'll encourage this in my own children and in my students, to really look at whether or not your social media behaviors, whether or not they're actually feeding something in you. You're just kind of grabbing the easy things, or you're just sort of keeping people as followers because that's what everybody does. And if you do find things that are of interest, or if there's things that you find controversial, are you pushing back and sort of looking at your social media activism in the same lens as digital social media and digital citizenship? So I might even show up at your house.
Don't do that.
I know. In that case, though, it would be appropriate, wouldn't it? In that particular case, if you did something like that, would it not seem like that would be a reasonable thing to do? Is like show up, or is that just you're calling the cops? You're calling the cops. That's what you're doing. You're calling the cops.
I'm calling the cops.
Right.
I would think, oh, Chris, there must be some mental illness going on here for him to come to my house knowing. Yeah. But I want to just say before we end this podcast, is that the whole business of social media and what you say about truth is that social media might be a starting point for a great relationship, right? Like, you don't know on social media, and I think this is where people, if we can be frank here for a second, I'm going to be honest with you about the whole mental health thing. I think one of the reasons why people look at other people's feeds and then start to feel bad about themselves or whatever the case is, don't feel so hot, is because they take what they're seeing to be truth. But we don't really know if it's truth, right? So when you see like so and so, pushed out 3 blog posts in a week and a bunch of people retweeted them and liked them, and you think, wow, I got nothing compared to this person. What am I doing with my life? This person's reflecting and sharing and communicating, and I'm just here. I'm just going to work and reading these tweets. We take those tweets to heart and we believe something about the person that may not be true.
I'll
And
go one
so,
step. I know it's not true. I
okay,
know it's not true for me, and the only reason I'll say that is because I haven't chosen to push beyond the published page. I know too much about what social media and what digital media, what that represents. It's such a small fraction of the dimensions of the human behind it. And I'll tell you flat out, it wasn't for me. I wouldn't have pursued. I can't say for sure that no, it took me hanging out with you in person to know for sure that I wanted you to be my friend. I needed that element of truth. I had to meet you in real life. We started through social media, and you've often said that you appreciate that as a way to kind of get to know people. For me, it closed when we first went to that Can Ed thing, and I knew I was going to get a chance to meet you and Hurley, Andrew Campbell. Um,
Andrew
I
Bronsky.
Yeah, Bronsky was there as well. That's what actually prompted me to go one step further. I was like, yep, this is my instinct was on point. The conversations were cool, right? And like I said, when I met you, I threw the hug on you that first time, and I knew this guy's not a hug guy. And then obviously you're thinking this guy's a hug guy. I don't know where this is gonna go. But again, we sat and we chatted, we connected, we made plans, we sort of moved forward. So just that whole like it wouldn't have been enough. It wouldn't be enough for me to just what I know about me is I have to push beyond the post to figure out whether or not that person actually has relevance in my life. Whether I choose to or not, sometimes is circumstantial. Sometimes there isn't the opportunity. Um, but I know that the things that people post online is not truth. Where I sort of look at is the repetition of it. How much of that not truth is taking up the feed? So how am I getting farther from actually getting to know the person by following their feed?
Okay, I appreciate you clarifying that because I do agree with you 100%. And what I would say next, and what I mean by that is, so I know some people that tweet and I know them personally and I see the non-truth in their tweets. I get that. But I do see truth in their tweets too. And I get what you're saying about for you, it's all like not true until you've made that face-to-face connection. That's what does it for you. And I'm telling you, for me, I'm not going to make face-to-face connection with 99.9% of these people. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to ever meet them or meet with them. And so knowing that, I don't necessarily know that what's the truth behind their tweets or the lack of truth behind their tweets or their Facebook posts or whatever the case may be. But I know that. And so I still move on. If Joe Blow, posts a wicked video to YouTube, I'm not going to walk around feeling bad about my life because I know how this whole thing operates. And don't get me wrong, there are other places in my life where I don't feel so hot based on what I see or hear, but social media is not one of them that's killing me there, right? So for me, I guess I look at the tweets, I look at the behavior, depending on whether I know the person or not digitally, we go from there. Like, so, in a way, we're blessed that we had that face to face meeting at the PD that we did. Because if it wasn't for that PD, you would not be having this conversation with me because we would have never gotten to this point for you in order to like seal the deal type of thing. And I'm really grateful for the relationships I have with people like Will Gourley and Andrew Campbell and Andrew B, because I've met them face to face. They've seen me, I've seen them. We've had back and forth. Like So, and I still talk to them and they still talk to me. I shouldn't put the ball in their court. I feel that they are good people. They are people that I'm happy to be connected with and to. Um, but 99.9% of the time, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to meet you face to face. And so I just need to go by the tweets. And hey, people put out their best. I get that, right? Like, my classroom tweet, we share the good things that happen in our class. Spoiler alert, right? Like, I'm not sharing with you these three kids got into a situation at recess and we had to spend 30 minutes in a classroom meeting trying to figure this out. I'm not. But I will make the videos about Advent and about unboxing these really cool things that come into my room because it's fun and there's good stuff happening there. But I get that you don't see all the stuff that doesn't happen there. I know we got to go, but I wore a GoPro this week on Wednesday. I wore a GoPro all day to capture my day as an elementary school teacher. It's kind of like a project that someone at my school board is looking at or into, and he said, hey, do you want to wear a GoPro all day and capture your day, like what it actually looks like to be an elementary school teacher from beginning to end? I said, yeah, man, I'm in. Let's do this. And I did it. And it was interesting because there were times there were times where I turned it off, but there were times during the day, like my planning time and lunchtime. At lunchtime, I was creating graphic organizers for an activity I want to do with my kids, but I was also watching the Joe Rogan podcast because it's my lunchtime. I want to get some stuff into my brain, but I also want to do my job. And I was like, should I be recording this? I'm like, yeah, I guess I should because this is my lunchtime. And then I did my morning duty where I just stand and cross kids in front of the buses. Kind of boring. Like, I don't think it's boring, but to anybody watching, it might be boring. At the end of the day, though, it was like, well, this is my day. This is what my day looks like. The times it was turned off was where kids were revealing things that like they're like, can I talk to you? I gotta talk to you about something. I'm like, yeah. Or staff that would kind of tap me on the shoulder and not come around and be like, turn that thing off. I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, that was my truth for that day. And my truth is not sexy. And nobody's gonna make a movie about it. But that was my day. And I'm glad that somebody wanted to kind of take a look at it. So, having said that, I'm glad that we had a chance to meet in real life because it's led to some awesome collaboration and stuff and good times. And, this might exist with other people out there, but I'm never going to know because, I've backed off on my PD and I've going places to do PD, and I've backed off on a lot of things that I kind of was interested in before. And so I'm telling you right now that it's going to be up to the universe to get me into a room with someone I've communicated with on social media where they can be like, hey, Roland's not a bad dude. Maybe we can continue to become friends or whatever. And I could do that with them. But until then, that's not going to happen.
I feel like this is where the outro music would start to fade in just underneath our conversation.
But we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't do that.
This is it. This is DCP, baby.
Take it as it is.
Hey, Decoded by DPC. Sorry.
No, you're right.
If I had a cool emoji, I'd put it right here, right now.
Boom. And it doesn't show the ones on Skype, which was kind of a disappointment. Those of you that use Skype, you can put emojis on the screen. We thought it was going to record it, but it's
and
not
as
there.
the music's fading, I'm gonna mention our sponsors. Thank you to Nobody for giving us money to make this happen, and also thank you to the local burger joint down the street that has not reached out to us to offer us anything for saying their name on air. And
you know what? This podcast, this conversation was brought to you by the dedication to do in public reflection. My family, who, we can carve out the time when this happens, and a dude named Roland Chidiak, who is my co-conspirator. There you go. There's the sponsorship. I'm all good with those three.
Can we see your picture before we go?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Let's see what Chris has Is that an apple tree? Oh, and the apple's falling from the tree. I like it.
It's the low hanging fruit.
Oh, the low hanging fruit. It's already been eaten. Look at that. People have already munched away at it. Oh, that's too bad. I'm gonna have to keep looking around the tree for some fruit that's not been touched. That's low hanging.
Well, do the work then.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Nobody
It's
wants
all
to do the work.
it's all up at the top.
If it's not low hanging, it's not worth the time for some people. Okay, bro, my hands are up. You gotta shut this
Okay.
down.
Ciao, man.
Yeah, have a good one.